Hello everyone and welcome back to day 23 of the 30-day film challenge, and today we're going to be talking about a movie that I am in no way qualified to talk intelligently about because this is the first time I've ever seen this movie. We are talking about A Clockwork Orange, which is my pick for a film that is made by a director who has passed away. And so this is directed by Stanley Kubrick, who has made my favorite horror movie of all time. That's right, The Shining. I have a review for that one, as well as Doctor Sleep, which I love both of those movies very, very much, but The Shining I just watched a couple weeks ago. And again, it's a brilliantly directed movie with some excellent performances, and say what you will about Stanley Kubrick's methods of directing, which can really be seen as terrible because his treatment of Shelley Duvall in The Shining was absolutely terrible, but you cannot deny that her performance in that film is just incredible. She's one of the best parts, if not the best part of that movie. But I'm no expert on Stanley Kubrick. This is only the third film of his that I've seen. I've seen, obviously, The Shining. I've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I'm going to talk a little bit about that film in this video as well. But I have finally seen A Clockwork Orange, which has been one of my movies that's been on my list for so very long. It's a classic for a reason, and I've watched this film, and there are so many thematic elements I can't even begin to grasp at what this movie really means or what Stanley Kubrick was truly trying to go for, because I haven't even seen a single video on this film. I had no idea what this movie was about before watching it. I went into this completely blind, not knowing who was in the movie, seeing only one image, which ended up being the opening image of the film, which was, I guess, I really had no idea what I was getting into, and this movie was nothing like what I was expecting it to be, besides the fact that it is a brilliantly directed film that is beautifully shot. John Alcott was immaculate behind the camera. Every shot in this film was beautifully set up and beautifully composed, and it was just such beautiful direction by both Stanley Kubrick and by his cinematography, which he's worked on several Stanley Kubrick movies like in the past. I think he did The Shining. I think he was a cinematographer for that, but he also did work on 2001: A Space Odyssey. And when it comes to this movie, I do want to talk about Stanley Kubrick the most because obviously that's the prompt of this film, or of this day in the challenge, but he really does elevate this film to a point where, yes, you can get into the deep thematic elements, which we will get into, but every moment of this movie, and the pacing especially, which I thought was much better than that of 2001: A Space Odyssey, whereas that movie, you had the 30 minutes of the apes, and then you had like half an hour of setup, and then you had an hour of just epic, sci-fi, AI, intelligence, and all that stuff with Hal, which is incredible. And then you get to the last 30 minutes of that film, which is just so far out there, which I can't even begin to grasp the concepts of that film. But when it comes to this movie, the beginning is very hard to watch because you're watching our main character, our narrator, do these terrible, terrible crimes, and you despise him a lot at the beginning of this film because he's doing some of the most unspeakable things that anybody could ever do. And then he gets arrested, and then he gets put into this program where they're trying to conform him, and they're trying to set his mind to have a sickening reaction to those type of crimes and to all these things, and to music, which is also one thing that is very, very attached to this film. This movie is very much about music as well as it is about crime, as well as it is about government, and about a bunch of different things. Like I said, a lot of thematic elements that I'm just scratching the surface of, just because this was my first watch of this film. So you get into that aspect of the government trying to, I guess, use him in a way. But then you also have the people who he committed the crimes to when he runs into that house again. Spoilers, of course, but he runs into that house that he did at the beginning of the film where he committed one of those crimes. And you have those people trying to go against the government, trying to have their own narrative, trying to use him as well. And so throughout this entire film, besides the first 30, 40 minutes of the movie, he's being used by several different people, by several different aspects, tugging him in one direction or tugging him towards another direction. But that idea that you can watch these films that he's forced to watch, and obviously you have that iconic moment of him having his eyes clamped open, which I freak out with any eye stuff in movies, so that was just very uncomfortable for me. And watching these terrible things on screen, as well as that's kind of what Stanley Kubrick's doing to the audience as well with this film, because you see these terrible things on screen at the beginning of the movie, and obviously you have your own different reactions to that. But if you react in a way like the main character would, when you get into that aspect where he's strapped to the chair and forced to watch these things, and he's forced to see how terrible it is, maybe it does force some people to look at those situations in a different way, which I would hope people don't watch this movie and be like, yeah, I'm with this guy at the beginning of the movie, because he's a terrible person. I think that's one aspect of this film that kept me from really attaching myself to the main character, because he was such a despicable person. And I never really felt bad for him at any point in this movie. Maybe when his parents kind of pushed him off on the side when he finally came home, maybe a little bit then, but at the same time, he was a terrible person. And when it comes to thematic elements, this movie is very much about free will and the fact that he's being tugged between two different aspects. The government is trying to control him and trying to take away his free will, and then the newspaper people, the one who when he got kidnapped by the person that he had committed the crimes against, he kind of forced an opposite narrative, and then it kind of goes back and forth a few times. And like I said, this film goes very deep, and it's kind of hard to grasp all the thematic elements out of this movie after just one viewing of it. But really, it's Stanley Kubrick's stance on how police reform works and how criminals can't really get out of the prison system and have a chance in the outside world. Because obviously, if you're convicted for anything, even wrongfully so, which we run into more and more around like these days now, we keep on finding these crimes that have been committed that was, they indicted the wrong person, which is a terrible thing, and how they never really have a chance to get out there into the world and have a normal life after that point, even if it was wrongful. So he has his stance on those type of things and how police reform, when you go into the prison system, there's no real effort to try to help these people. They just put them in a box, throw away the key, and forget about them. Society forgets about these people. And so in some ways, this film is about that, and it's very thematic in that way, but also the government aspects. But also, this is a very deep character study of this terrible person and how this sci-fi element of trying to conform his mind into getting sick when he sees these terrible things is a fascinating storyline. So I think this is a film that I would need to watch again, that would need to really dive into the thematic elements, maybe watch a video or two about it, because if you watch this video to try to see an ending explained for A Clockwork Orange, this is not the video whatsoever, because I need to watch a video that's the ending explained of this movie. So if you have any ideas, any concepts that you guys have heard around the internet or you guys have thought of yourself, comment them down below, because I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this film. It's a very interesting movie, and if you have not seen it, I definitely recommend watching it just for the fact that it is beautifully directed and beautifully shot, and that is the most praiseworthy thing I can give about this movie. I really enjoyed is probably the wrong word, but I enjoyed watching this film. I thought it was a fascinating movie to think about, and I'm literally recording this minutes after I just watched the movie, so let me know what you guys think of this one. It's definitely a fascinating one. So subscribe to the channel to see more of the 30-day film challenge. I'm coming up to the end of the series, so we're going to say goodbye to this series soon. So hopefully some new releases come out soon, which I think on July 10th, a bunch of new streaming movies are coming out. So I'm excited to talk about a bunch of those. So subscribe to the channel. Check out my documentary on amateur hour films that I released this past Saturday. Had a lot of fun making that, worked very hard on it. So if you guys can check that out, I'd greatly appreciate it, as well as check out their channel as well. So thanks guys for watching this video. Subscribe, comment below, leave a like, and I hope to see you all in my next one.